Hello and welcome to part 5 of how to model automatic Kalashnikov rifle on SDF 3D or Subdivformer, which is a 3D modeling application on the Android platform that you can find on Google Play Store. My name is Razaki. Now, on the previous video, we modeled various components of the gun, including all the major components except the muzzle, which we're going to model in this video. And so, with no further ado, I'm going to start modeling them. As you can see, we attempted very much to make sure that all the objects, all the components are proportional to each other, with comparison to the reference image that we have here that I downloaded earlier. Now, after recording the previous video, I decided to study the details on both of these images that I've got here in order to make sure that accuracy is maintained, because right here there are some components you can find which look flat, but according to the other reference image here that has got a perspective projection of the gun, shows us that it's actually not even flat. So it means that we might have to model more components or fine-tune the details much later, much more than we would have expected with regards to viewing the Kalashnikov rifle on this perspective, which is the side view. So we're going to model this time around the muzzle of the gun, which basically are 3 tubes joined together in the middle, and all of them are of different sizes and lengths. And then after that, we will move to modeling the trigger before we go into fine-tuning the details. So I really believe that this is not going to take a long time, and to make sure that does not happen, let's take a moment to start modeling. So I'm going to go back to Subdivformer, but first let's take a moment to preview the muzzle and see how long it is. By eyeballing this, I can say that it's almost the same length as, the muzzle is almost the same length as the wooden component right behind it, as I can see. So I will model with reference to that and just eyeball it a little bit to make sure that I go way ahead. So it's going to be 150%, not really, it's going to be 100 and roughly 10% or 5% or 20% of the wooden component behind it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. I like to shut away, or I like to turn off the X, Y, and Z axis reference planes to make the object more visible from all directions. It's just a matter of preference. And with no talking, we're going to add a component. We're going to add this sphere, which we'll use to model the components that we've got in our model. So I'm just going to start by extruding. We'll go to shape and extrude that face, and then I will select the entire object by tapping region, go to transform, and I will change the view to top view in order to make sure that we're doing the right thing, and then I will just move it along the x-axis, move it forward, in order to compare it to the components that we have made so far. And then after that, I will go to scale it, and now scale along all the axes, that's X, Y, and Z. And I realize that the muzzle is a little bit, I don't know if I should say thinner, or it has a smaller radius compared to the wooden components supporting it and holding it towards the main body of the gun. After scaling it down along the X, Y, and Z axis, I'm going to then select it all again and scale it along the x-axis, make it bigger along that axis, which is going to make it longer. And we're going to eyeball it with regards to the wooden components supporting it. So just move it a little closer, and I will move it forward in order to have them side by side for comparison purposes. Now that we have already finished with that, I'm just going to select both the front and the back faces of the muzzle and go to shape. We'll just subdivide them to make them flatter, and you would realize that we have a little bit of it's a bit longer than the wooden component, which we really want, and it actually seems to be the right size with regards to length. So just move it along the x-axis again to place it immediately accurately accurately alongside the wooden components, so that we can look at it and manipulate it further. So I'm just going to scale it down along all the axes, because it's supposed to have a smaller diameter compared to the two wooden components along it. And then I'm going to scale up along the x-axis to make it longer, just a little bit longer. I believe that's perfect for us. So now we'll move it forward. Before I start making all the other details on the muzzle, I think we're going to do that because it's a very simple part of this gun to model, because it's just basically a cylinder. So we're going to model all the components of it, all the details right now. So I'll just type bullet into position, and then after that I will add in the details. So I'll just zoom it a little closer. So sorry, I'm just going to zoom it a little closer from the front view in order to see exactly how it falls into place and make sure to put it correctly where it is supposed to be. There is something that's going on here. Just going to undo that because I've been moving the muzzle along the wrong axis, or the x-axis. Okay, I'm just going to get back to the front view again and select the entire muzzle by tapping one face and selecting region on the side. And then again I'm going to move it along the y-axis very, very gently. Very, very gently. It can be a little bit tricky trying to move small objects and eyeballing them into position because of the finger motion in comparison to that. By the way, due to that challenge, I've got to inform you that we can also select a few other things from this menu in the settings area, which you can find on the left hand side of the screen right there. And so you can, apart from shutting down the X, Y, Z axis guides and colors of the objects that you've got and buttons, text, you can also go to rotate step. I like turning it down all the way to 1. That's the smallest number we've got here. And I'll also turn the rest of the measurements here to 1, which will affect how fast or the relative motion that the object would have with regards to the speed of my finger as I swipe right across it. So again, I've been moving it along the x-axis, which is wrong, so I'm just going to undo that. And then once again I'm going to try to eyeball it into the right position. Let's just see how far it's gone into the object right behind it. So I'm just going to move it down along the z-axis. I think that's much easier right now. Oh, I forgot to select the entire object. So I'll just move it down along the z-axis. I believe right there. Right there. Well, it's time for us to make reference from the image that we downloaded earlier. So I'll just have the progress and select the object, the project again, and then go back to photos and see. I wanted to compare the width of, the diameter of this muzzle with regards to, in comparison to the diameter of the wooden components right behind it. And I see we're not doing really badly off, because the diameter is not really small. It's just the right size that we have got in our model, I believe. Yeah, it seems to be the right size for me. And much later, if it's not, then we will have to just change it up a little bit which is not going to be a hard thing. So I'm just going to select this entire object again, and I will eyeball it along the y-axis to place it in a central position to the wooden component behind it. And I'm making a little bit of progress, but it's a little bit challenging, so I have to try and be gentle and very, very precise with my placement, since that has been very demanding for effort. I'll just make sure to put it correctly and save it. So now the next thing we're going to model is the front of the muzzle, which is basically a hole, and it has a few ridges to it, which I want to view from the side to make sure that I'm going to model accurately. Yeah, so there are these three parts of it. There is that area, which is the smallest in terms of radius or diameter, and then the second smallest, and then the muzzle itself, I believe, make reference from the other emergency. Exactly, that's it. And then there is this little ridge right there. We're going to handle that later as well, before we move to other details. So there we go. Now I'll maintain this view for now and select the face in front of the gun. Now since it goes forward, I'm going to just turn it around to a perspective view like that, and then I will extrude it. I think first I should subdivide it again and make it smaller. So I'll go to Shape and Subdivide. This is going to help us to ensure that we do not have some not so good looking chunkiness around it. And then again I'm going to transform it by scaling it along all the axes right there to make sure that we have a sharp edge in contrast with the rest of it. And after that I will extrude it again. Shape, extrude, and I'll move it back a little bit, so I'll just go to transform and move along the x-axis back somewhere like there. Oops, sorry. So I'm just going to move it to a position of that sort, and I will just rotate it a little bit and use my visual memory to compare it to what we saw back then in the reference image. Okay, so once again I'm going to move it along the x-axis because it seems to be bigger than we really require it to be. Right there. Fantastic. So I'm just going to again subdivide it. So I'll go to Shape and Subdivide. Becomes flatter. Right there. I'm going to tap Increase because I just realized that we need to make it a little shorter. So I'm going to just try to eyeball it into position again and see how that goes for us. Let's see. So again we have to make sure that we do not have a bad effect to the gun, to the muzzle, by having some edges which are combined with other edges and will look abnormally sharp, and the details will have been corrected a little bit. So I'm just going to select it again and tap Increase to increase the number of faces that have been selected and move it along the x-axis. Okay. Yeah, it can be really challenging to trick that. So I'm just going to turn it to side view and see what exactly is happening. Perhaps we're just overshooting the details and the precision that we need to employ right now. So yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to move it along the x-axis. Not that, but this. Okay, so I'm just going to move it again along the x-axis. I think that's good enough for us for the moment. I'm going to deselect all the faces and change the view into perspective. Select the front face again and extrude and subdivide. I think this is the easiest part we can do ever. So we're just going to subdivide. Then I will increase the number of faces that have been selected and move it back along the x-axis a little bit. Okay. Right there, right there. So again, I'm going to deselect all the faces. I'll select the face at the front and scale it along all the axes. Right there. Sometimes it becomes really hard to see the effects of what you're doing because the model is smaller. So I'm going to intrude the front face that I've selected. And then I will move it back along the x-axis. Transform and move along the x-axis. Back all the way. And then, you know, one thing about 3D models is that we can see what's inside. So because we can see what's inside, we're going to make sure that what's inside is also beautiful. I like to do that. It's not really something that you should go ahead and do, but I just like to do it. So I'll just subdivide the face at the back. And as much as I like to do it, it's just a preference of mine. It is also very important to make sure that it remains like that, because if you don't, it will affect the overall shape of your cylinder, which I'm just going to show you, or your object altogether. Okay, so got something that we need to correct here really badly. We really need to correct it. So I'm just going to select the face of the back side. Interestingly, we cannot see it really clearly because we're looking at the opposite side of the normals. I'm just going to zoom it in and correct the blender. So there we go. Yeah, I'll move it along the x-axis to move it forward. Okay, a few faces need to be selected again. So I'm just going to tap increase and say move along the x-axis all the way forward. I will deselect all the faces and select the face of the back side and move it inwards all the way there. And then I'll turn it around and see how it looks from the front, because it's something that you can see if the model is rotated in different directions by you. Okay, so it does not look bad, but well, we can see what's going on in there. We can see the shape of everything that we've got there. So something else that we really need to do before we wrap up this section where we're modeling the muzzle of the gun is that we have to acknowledge and appreciate the fact that these faces towards the towards the front of the gun are curving up, and that we've got to correct. So I'll select the two faces and tap strip to make sure that I've selected all the faces along that area across the front of the muzzle, and I will just tap shift and go to I'll split again, because it's very advantageous for us to use split than to use subdivide function, because the subdivide function is going to give us twice the number of extra vertices than splitting the object. So, well, that's the muzzle. Apparently it's taken a very long time. Not really very long, but the average time. Interestingly, it's taken nearly as much time as we spent earlier modeling the other models. The other objects. I think it's okay because of the amount of detail we've put here. And so I'll select the faces on the inside, and I'll tell you why. So I'm just going to say strip, and then I will go back to transform and scale it along all the axes. Okay, sorry. Scale it along all the axes and make it smaller. And I will scale it again along the x-axis. I'm sure when we do that, what's going to happen is part of the muzzle is going to come outside. Yeah, I don't know how. Oh, maybe it's gone all the way to the back side. I'm actually looking at the back side of the gun. Okay, so that's it. That's our muzzle. We've made it entirely in 20 minutes. And so the reason I was making the front of the muzzle thick is because we've got a thicker muzzle here. Actually, there's something we've missed out on that we're going to work on later. Not later, but just right now. We're going to sort that out immediately. So the muzzle has got a circular ridge around it. I think that's what also makes it less curvy, as it is in the case of our model. Less curvy than it is on the model we've got here. So I'm just going to zoom in, and we're going to select these two faces in front of the muzzle. Okay, it's a bit challenging to select smaller components, but it's okay. Zooming. So I'm just going to make it a little bigger in order to get rid of the challenge that we're currently facing with the process of selecting the entire object. So select one face and tap region, go to transform, scale, and scale it along all the axes. We're going to make it smaller, but for the purpose of selecting them more easily, I'll just make it bigger right now. So we'll select these two faces here. Sorry, select the face on the inside. So these two faces at the front, and tap strip to make sure that all of them are selected. And then I will go to shape and all the way to subdivide. And then I will split these faces. And then I will select the faces in between all of them. And I will just go to transform and scale them along all the axis. And I will deselect all the faces and select the other faces outside them all along the front. And that's the wrong one. So I meant not that. I think there's a second. It's the second face from the front. Okay, again I'm just going to select the entire region and scale it up along all the axes in order to enable us to select these faces much easily and faster. Okay. Challenge time. Challenge, go bloody away. Okay. So I'll select this. Wow. I'll zoom in a little more. Okay, got this thing that we're not concentrating on. Just forget that we can look at it from the front perspective and manipulate it more easily. So select that face and tap strip and go back. Go to perspective view and see what happens. So we're going to shape and subdivide. No, we're not going to shape and subdivide. We're going to, let's try moving it before we intrude. So I'll just move it back along the x-axis. Back. Did not really look as good as I expected. So I'll just undo that change and turn back to the front view and zoom in order to select it much better. Two faces. Oof. Okay, so once again to the front view, zoom in, deselect all the faces, tap that, and okay, tap that, and say strip, then turn around to the perspective view. So realize that moving is giving us a really weird effect, so I'll just shape and intrude. And then I will just go back to transform and pull those faces forward. along the x-axis. There they are. So we're just going to pull them forward. They don't seem to be giving us the effects that I'm expecting, or the similarity at least of, the model that we have there. I'm just going to save the progress and go to photos and check our reference image again. Well, yeah, actually it's what we're expecting. Okay, so only that it's got some more modifications that we've got to do in order to have it 100%, which is not a problem for us because we have to do it. So just select the front faces again, the same ones that we were selecting. There. No. Okay. There. Tap strip to select all of them. Something's wrong. Selected one face that's not in line with this. So there and there. Tap strip to select the entire loop. Go to shape and we're going to perspective view. And so we're going to intrude, move it forward along the x-axis. Yeah. Let's just zoom in a little bit so that we can have a closer and clearer view of what's going on here. Let's move it along the x-axis now. Okay. A little more. Okay. Okay. Just service provider warning me about my airtime. Okay, so I'm just going to select this other views inside of it to make sure that it's less chunky. I'm going to turn it around back to the front view and select this faces here. Right there. Tap strip to select all of them and scale along all the axes. Okay, to allow this gun to have a little bit of curvature right there. Okay, the tutorial has been going on for a long time, but bear with me. I'm just going to finish this model. This part of the gun before we say goodbye for now, and then we're going to come back to the next video in the series. So select the two first and say strip and go back to shape and say yeah, and move them backwards after we're done with them. So the important thing that you can do for yourself is to make sure that you turn your model around a little bit in order to see, just in case you select the wrong faces. It happens. It's something that we just have to, as 3D artists, contend with. Okay, right there. So we're not going to drive this any further. Just going to scale it back down by selecting the entire region and scaling it along all the axes. Zoom in and eyeball it to the right size with regards to the rest of the gun. Okay, so just gonna move it back along the x-axis. Right there. Still, we've got a lot of little bit more scaling to do. So just scale it down a little bit. Stand it to the front view and see what exactly is happening to us. Zoom in a little bit. Okay, top view. Turns out that we have to move this region back to where it's supposed to be. So I'm just going to scale it down a little bit and then I'll move it back along the x-axis. So we have come to the end of this video right now. I don't want to make it go any longer, so I'll save this project, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you're moving forward well with the gun as well, just in case you're following through. Next we'll be modeling the little muzzle here and the other muzzle on top of it. Actually, the tube. And then after that, we will start by modeling the trigger before we move into making the finer details and wrap up the model. So I hope that this tutorial has been really helpful, and I hope that it has taught you a few things with regards to 3D modeling on Android platform using SDF 3D. And also I hope that the tricks and lessons we're learning here are also going to be helpful for you when you're modeling things on Blender, because I am learning stuff here. I mean, I've been learning things since I started modeling on Android. It has been really helpful for me. I guarantee you it's been very, very helpful, because I just realized that there are some shortcuts I've not been using while modeling stuff on Blender that now I can use with Subdivformer on the Android platform. So then, if you do not have SDF 3D downloaded, you can just find it on Google Play Store, and you can download it, and you will have an opportunity to follow through with these tutorials, and it will be very helpful, and I'll be very glad about it. So jump into the comment section if you've got any tricks and ideas that you would like to offer, and I'll be very glad to hear from you. So without dragging this any further, just going to end the video here, and thank you very much for watching.